A donkey talking about money? Yeah, I know. Sounds like the start of another human financial disaster. But here's the uncomfortable truth. I've watched people work all month, get paid on Friday, and be broke again by Monday. And then they swear the problem is not enough salary. Please, I'm a donkey, not a magician, but even I know this. The first amount you keep is worth more than any raise you beg for. If you've ever called a random spending spree an investment, go ahead and admit it in the ISI comments so I know humans haven't changed since my farm days. You ever notice how humans panic about money the moment their paycheck arrives? Like the cash is made of smoke that disappears if they blink too slow? I watch you earn hard cash and treat it like hot hay, rushing to spend it before it cools, as if saving $1 might make you less alive. Back on the farm, even chickens understood the value of keeping something for later. But humans? You see 5,000 saved and act like it is an optional decoration. Here is the truth you avoid. A small pile of money works harder than a big raise you already planned to waste. That first saved amount is not about size, it is about proof. Proof that you can control the creature living in your head whispering, "Buy it now." Studies show that most Americans would struggle with a $400 emergency, and yet you swear the problem is lack of salary. No, the problem is lack of habit. When you save 5,000, you build a shield, a buffer, a quiet confidence that no raise can buy. It is the moment your brain stops living paycheck to paycheck and starts thinking like someone who will actually escape the financial mud. And if that sounds uncomfortable, good. Discomfort means something real is coming next. Humans love to say they need a raise, but let me tell you a secret from someone who spent years watching farmers count every grain. More money only multiplies whatever habits you already have. If you are careless with 1,000, you will be reckless with 5. That is why saving 5,000 hits different. It forces you to confront your own patterns, those financial reflexes you pretend are deserved rewards. I have seen humans get a raise on Friday and upgrade everything by Monday. New bills, new payments, same panic. A study from Harvard found that lifestyle creep eats raises faster than taxes, but you insist the solution is earning more instead of keeping more. Saving 5,000 is the moment the cycle cracks. It is when you stop feeding impulse and start feeding discipline. It is when your brain whispers, "Maybe I can actually control this," instead of "I hope next month is better." And once you taste that control, everything changes. Because the truth is simple. The raise improves your mood, but the savings improve your life. And if you think that is dramatic, wait until you see what happens in the next chapter. Humans underestimate how powerful a small financial foundation is because you treat money like weather, sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, always out of your control. Back on the farm, if the grain bin had even a modest reserve, everyone slept better, even the rooster. 5,000 saved works the same way. It is not a fortune, it is stability dense enough to shift your behavior. Psychologists call it the security threshold, the moment your brain stops reacting like prey and starts planning like a builder. When you hit that number, you notice your decisions change. You no longer chase discounts like a hungry goat. You start asking if the purchase even matters. A report from the Federal Reserve showed that people with a basic cash cushion make fewer impulsive financial choices, not because they suddenly become geniuses, but because fear stops running the show. That 5,000 turns down the volume of panic and turns up the volume of strategy. You start thinking in weeks and months instead of hours. And once your mind crosses that line, you realize something uncomfortable. You were never bad with money, you were just living too close to zero. But here is where it gets interesting, because the next chapter exposes the part humans avoid the most. The funny thing about humans is that you keep blaming your income for problems that were born from your impulses. I watched people on the farm do the same with food. They blamed hunger while eating half the grain in one afternoon. 5,000 saved exposes this truth with a cruel clarity. The moment you reach that number, you notice how often you used shopping to calm stress, boredom, or ego. Studies from behavioral economists show that most purchases under $50 are emotional, not logical, which means the issue is not math, it is mood. And here is where the 5,000 acts like a mirror. It forces you to admit that you were not buying things because you needed them, but because you needed escape. When you have a savings base, you see these patterns with sharp focus, like a flashlight. In a dark barn. Suddenly every impulse looks suspicious. Every discount looks manipulative. Every micro-purchase feels like a leak in a bucket you worked too hard to fill. And once you see the leaks, you cannot unsee them. That is why this stage is uncomfortable. It confronts the version of you that kept yourself broke. But do not worry. In the next chapter, we dig into how that discomfort becomes your most profitable weapon. Here is the part humans rarely understand. Discomfort is not the enemy of wealth, it is the birthplace of it. Back on the farm, when the barn got cold, the animals moved differently, sharper, more alert. 5,000 saved creates that same sharpened awareness. It makes you notice how every choice either protects or destroys your progress. Researchers at Duke University found that people who experience even a small financial win develop stronger long-term discipline, almost like a mental muscle waking up. When you hit 5,000, that muscle kicks in. You start questioning subscriptions you forgot existed, meals you could cook instead of buy, gadgets that promised happiness but delivered dust. And with every decision you feel a new identity forming, one that values stability over spectacle. This is the turning point. The chapter where you stop seeing savings as punishment and start seeing it as freedom. The freedom to walk away from a job you hate, to survive an emergency without panic, to make choices based on logic instead of fear. And if you think 5,000 is just a number, wait until you see what happens when that number starts working for you instead of sitting still, because the next chapter is where the game shifts entirely. 5,000 saved does something magical, and trust me, I do not use that word lightly. It changes the direction of the financial wind. Suddenly, time stops working against you and starts working for you. Back on the farm, when the farmer planted even a small patch of seeds, we all knew what was coming. Growth, slow at first, then unstoppable. Money behaves the same way. Once you have that initial pile, compounding interest stops being a theory and starts being a quiet worker in the background. Even modest returns begin to add weight to your future. A study from Vanguard showed that the first chunk of savings produces the highest psychological momentum because it proves compounding is real, not a myth you see on charts. You begin to realize that your money can finally help you instead of constantly needing rescue. You start checking balances with curiosity instead of fear, planning months ahead instead of days. And with each week, the 5,000 feels less like a finish line and more like a foundation. That is when you understand the truth every wealthy human eventually learns. Growth is a reward for staying, not for starting. And in the next chapter, you will see how this foundation becomes leverage, the kind that changes everything. Once you have 5,000 saved, something interesting happens. Opportunities stop hiding from you. It is like when the farmer left a bucket of carrots unattended. Suddenly every smart animal in the barn appeared. Money works the same way. When you have a cushion, life shows you chances that would never appear while you were broke. A coworker offers a small partnership. A friend sells equipment cheap. A course you always wanted finally makes sense because now you can invest without fear. Studies from the University of Chicago show that people with even modest savings are far more likely to recognize profitable opportunities simply because their brain is not busy surviving. Survival thinking blinds you. Stability thinking sharpens you. With 5,000 saved, you begin to see choices instead of traps. You say no to nonsense faster. You say yes to growth sooner. And slowly you become someone who is financially strategic instead of financially reactive. This is where wealth begins in real life. Not on the motivational posters humans love to share. But do not get too comfortable yet, because the next chapter is where we handle the part humans resist the most. Letting savings change your identity, not just your account. Here is the truth humans avoid more than broccoli and bank statements. Money does not just change your bank account, it changes your identity. When you finally save 5,000, your brain stops seeing yourself as someone who hopes and starts seeing someone who builds. Identity is powerful. Back on the farm, even the smallest animal became bold when it knew it had food stored for winter. Humans are no different. Studies from MIT show that people who achieve small financial milestones begin to act more confidently, negotiate better, and plan further ahead. Saving 5,000 creates that shift. You stop calling yourself unlucky and start calling yourself intentional. Purchases feel different. Debt feels unacceptable. Waste feels offensive. And this new identity quietly influences everything you touch. You begin to walk past temptations that used to own you. You start protecting your progress like a guard dog protecting the barn. But here is the twist. This identity shift is only the beginning. Because once you see yourself as someone who can save 5,000, you cannot help but wonder what else you can do. And that question leads directly to the final chapter, where the real transformation begins. By the time you save 5,000, something irreversible happens. You stop living life on defense and start playing offense. It is the moment your financial story flips from survival to strategy. Back on the farm, the animals that stored food early were always the ones who made it through storms without panic. Humans pretend it is different, but it is not. 5,000 saved is your storm shelter, your leverage, your proof that you can outgrow the habits that kept you stuck. Research from the CFP board shows that people with a basic emergency fund build wealth at nearly triple the speed of those without one. Why? Because small stability creates big decisions. With 5,000, you choose jobs with more freedom, invest with less fear, negotiate with more confidence, and say no to nonsense that used to drain you. You become harder to manipulate, harder to stress, harder to break. And that is the true power of this milestone. It is not the money, it is the version of you that appears once the excuses disappear. If this chapter hit you harder than expected, good. Now tell me in the comments, are you chasing a raise or building your first 5,000?